Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Soldiers of Cinema podcast. As always, I am Colin McFader, joined by Clark Coffey for another episode, another lovely, fantastic, fun, exciting, in-depth conversation, the modern-day Siskel and Ebert.
What? Wow. Oh my, wait. Okay, there's a couple things to unpack here from this intro. Number one, I'm glad you're still Colin McFader. That's good,
Yes.
as always.
Yeah.
I would be super freaked out if you were like, introduced yourself as someone else.
I could do a name change just to switch things up.
Stage
maybe one
name.
day.
You need a stage name. Maybe we both do. And first of all, that was a lot of really flowery adjectives used to describe our podcast there, right? Which, hey, I'm not going to disagree with any of them. I mean, I feel like it's right on. Other people might think, it's a little indulgent, maybe a little, full of ourselves, but I feel like I agree with most of that. That was one heck of an intro, man.
I'm trying to hype up the episode. So
I love it too, though, how it's like the tone of your voice is like pretty chill. Like, you maintain like a pretty chill inflection, right? But yet still, I feel like somehow, manage to impart the awesomeness of
of
what
the
lies
Soldiers
ahead
of
for
Cinema
people.
podcast.
Oh wait, okay. Anyway, have we even gotten to the film yet? We haven't even.
No, not yet. No.
This is your pick, man. So
Yes.
Introduce away, young sir.
Well, so I've been wanting to do a Coen Brothers movie for quite some time, and perhaps inspired by.
Have we not done a Coen Brothers?
No,
film
and I think subconsciously inspired by the fact that you chose In the Name of the Father, which is a film that you hadn't seen.
Right.
I decided to basically go for what I believe is the only Coen Brothers movie I've never seen, which is, of course, in the episode title, Raising Arizona. Figured I'd knock that off my list. So.
Son, you got a panty on your head. Just drive fast, eh?
Turn to the right!
The first time I met Ed was in the county lockup in Tempe, Arizona. You're a flower, you are. A day I'll never forget.
I do.
You bet I do.
Okay, then.
My lawless years were behind me. Our child-rearing years lay ahead. But biology conspired to keep us childless.
You go right back up there and get me a toddler. I need a baby high. They got more than they can handle.
At the time, Ed's little plan seemed like the solution to all our problems. And the answer to all our prayers.
He's beautiful.
What? Are you kidding? We got us a family here.
I want Nathan Jr. back!
What's his name?
Ed Jr.
Hi, Junior.
So far, we've just been using Junior.
We call him Junior.
He's out there somewhere.
Hold on, Nathan. We're gonna go pick up Daddy.
I've been taking these Huggies and, whatever cash you got.
You busted out of jail.
We released Kershav on our own recognizance. What Double here is trying to say is that we felt the institution no longer had anything to offer us.
We got a child now. Everything's changed.
Where's Junior? Who the hell are you?
I'm a man.
We're absolutely going to get him back. There just ain't no question about that.
Give me that baby, you warthog from hell!
Hey, you want to know another thing? I'm going to be a better person from here on out. Let's go get Nathan Jr.
Raising Arizona, a comedy beyond belief.
Well, it ain't Ozzie and Harriet.
Wow. Okay, so I'm totally surprised we haven't done a Coen Brothers film yet. And I almost don't even believe it. Out of all the episodes that we've done thus far, which is approaching 80, we've not done a Coen Brothers film?
No, not yet. No.
Wow. Okay, and then 2, you've not seen Raising Arizona?
It's one of those things. I mean, I feel like we all have those movies where it's like they're classics and you have known about them for eons. And
you just don't get
never
to it.
Gotten the chance to sit down and watch them. So that's this one for me. I feel like I already knew everything about this movie and just hadn't yet seen it.
Well, I mean, look, it makes sense. I mean, the movie was released, 20 years before your birth, almost.
10.
You know,
Only
10.
10. Yeah.
Only 10. That's what. Gosh,
Yeah.
you know what? I've known you for so long. Like it's like you've aged before my
I hope
eyes.
that I wasn't born in 2008.
You've aged before my eyes. But okay, I was just being a little cheeky there. But I mean, you know, look, I've got films like that too, right? Where it's just there's only there's only so much time in a life, and there's so many films, you know. How can you see them all? Well, I'm glad that we're rectifying the fact that we haven't covered a Coen Brothers film, because with the exception of maybe one or two, and you know, I absolutely adore their films, and frankly, even in the films that I find like least enjoyable, there's still something there that's good about every one of their films. They're extraordinary, and they're a couple of my favorite filmmakers. But let's dive in. I mean, I'm especially interested, since this is the first time you've seen this film. I'm especially interested to kind of hear your initial first viewing thoughts on the film. Did you like it? What were, you know, just as you were watching it? I'm curious, because I think it's so unlike, I mean, we'll get into this, but it's I think the second film that they made, and it's so unlike their later films. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I definitely, I enjoyed it a lot. I think that what you say is true, that it is very, if you went into this after seeing, you know, one of their later movies, you would feel there is definitely a difference in style and in, you know, even just attitude towards character and story and everything like that. But I think that there also are a lot of through lines. There's a lot of, you can see the seeds of what they ended up going into and how they ended up making their choices. And I can't remember if we didn't do Hard 8 for an episode, did we? We've never done Hard 8, I don't think.
I don't think so, no.
Because I was going to say, it kind of reminded me of not in any way stylistically, but just kind of watching Hard 8 and seeing how different PTA was then than he is now, and yet you still have these kind of nuggets of,
well, I mean, if you're going to parallel PTA, I mean, I feel like Blood Simple is their Hard 8, and this is Boogie Nights.
Yeah. Yeah,
but
this one's a lot kinetic and yeah.
But but before we get into the analysis stuff, we're gonna have tons of time for that, all that analysis stuff, analysis stuff. I just like what was like your viewing experience, like what, like just on like pure like audience level, that kind of vibe.
Yeah, I think so. I liked it a lot. I mean, it's great. It's like really funny. Nick Cage is fantastic. I enjoyed him throughout it. I think that one thing that kind of caught me was just that there still is this kind of semblance of like a regular movie in here, where it's like, I almost found that it was in a lot of ways the kind of the anti, like Badlands or Sugarland Express, where it's about this couple who, you know, obviously wants a baby and they commit a crime, and yet in very like classic Coen fashion. And one of the things that I love about them, and definitely loved about this, is just that it's almost always feels like the stakes are super low, like that nobody is actually really in any danger, which I kind of, you know, that wouldn't work for everything, but they do it in such a style that it makes it work, because you just, every character is just written so well. And I think that that's kind of what sucks you in anytime. I will say that I don't think this would be one of my favorites of theirs. I don't think that this has, you know, surpassed my other loves for the Coens, but I think that it definitely, I mean, like you said, where it's like I wouldn't even say that there wasn't anything I disliked about this. So even on that level, like there were certainly movies of theirs that I have liked a lot less. But I think, I don't know, it's kind of one of those things where I knew what to expect going in, because they are such specific filmmakers, and yet I also was really surprised at how different a lot of it was from a lot of their other work. Like again, like this very kinetic. You know, I know that their friendship with Sam Raimi obviously was really, really close at this point, especially, and so I find it interesting how, even though nowadays they're very, very different filmmakers, you still see a lot of weird stylistic crossover between the two of them, and I kind of this borrowing of ideas, and clearly they, you can see how close they were, especially that Evil Dead 2 would have come out the same year. And even just in Nick Cage's performance, how like he's so physical and he's so like his hair is just going crazy, and it almost in a weird way kind of reminded me a little bit of like Bruce Campbell's like over the top, very
or even like Jim
slapstick.
Carrey and Ace Ventura.
Oh yeah,
almost.
absolutely. Well, his outfits in this are basically Jim Carrey's in Ace Ventura.
Yep.
But no, I mean I think, and I love Nick Cage in this too.
So you dug it. Ultimately, you dug the film. You thought it was okay. I was just because it's. I mean, I feel like you have to start there, right? It's like just as an audience, because we're gonna spend the rest of the podcast going into the nitty gritty of it all. But really, it's like you start with this. Like we're audience members first. It's like we're cinema lovers first. It's like. Did you laugh? Did you cry? Were you moved? Were you entertained? Were you bored? I feel like that's kind of like fundamentally you've got to start there. All right. Well, that's interesting. We'll like dive into it. Like you touched on a lot of things. I think we'll dive into in more detail in a minute. I mean, for me, this film came out in '87, so I was 11 when it was released. I did not see it at the theater, being 11. But I saw it not long thereafter, probably a couple of years after on HBO or something like that. Like so many films that were released in this era, I saw on television. I wouldn't have even been old enough to have like rented this on VHS. I wouldn't have known to rent this on VHS. I'm sure that this just came on HBO and I just happened to be watching. And, I didn't know who the Coen Brothers were. I'd never heard of Blood Simple at this point in time. That would not have been a film that would have interested 11-year-old Clark or 12 or 13-year-old Clark, I remember very specifically this film being on heavy rotation on cable TV. And I remember watching it and just being totally freaking blown away. I mean, you got to, imagine like a 13-year-old watching this film, right? Mm-hmm. It almost seems like the perfect audience for this film.
Especially, growing up in the Midwest.
And I just absolutely thought it was hysterical. But even more so, I feel like this is one of those films that, and I saw this before Evil Dead. I didn't know who Sam Raimi was. None of this. This is one of those films that I think it expanded my like horizon. Like it, kind of blew my mind as far as like what cinema could potentially be. Like like here's an avenue, here's a tone, here's a style I'd never seen before. Like I had never seen something like a live cartoon in the way this is a live cartoon. And you talked about how the stakes don't ever feel like nobody's going to get hurt, right? Mm-hmm. It's a comedy, not a tragedy. It's like, although there are tragic kind of elements in it, which of course is vital for comedy. But yeah, everybody's going to be okay in the end. It's kind of just like a cartoon, and it's the tattoos that Nick Cage has, right? Is it like who I don't even know? Is it like Woody Woodpecker?
I think it's Woody Woodpecker because I think they designed his hair based off of Woody Woodpecker.
So even there, it's kind of a nod to like it's almost would have been better if it was like the Roadrunner or something, because I feel like it's almost like Wile E. Coyote, like. It's people chasing each other and shooting at each other and all this stuff.
That bit in the grocery stores.
But it's like Acme.
Fantastic.
But it's like Acme. Nobody's really going to get hurt. But but it's exciting nonetheless. But yeah, so when I first saw this film, I remember I used to walk around like quoting this film. And just like randomly where it didn't even make sense. Like I remember I just thought it was hysterical where Nick Cage is running around with a nylon on his head and he like grabs the trucker, right? That old guy in the pickup truck. And a guy turns over and he's like, son, you got a panty on your head. I just used to say that. I used to just like walk
or
around
when they're in, all the people in the bank are on the floor and then Holly Hunter runs in and what do you say? Just get on the floor, ma'am. It'll be okay.
Yeah.
and the guy who robbed
Pretty
them,
Little Honey
John
or
Goodman
something.
and what's his name are long gone at that point.
So for my like 13-year-old mind, it really did blow my mind. Mm-hmm. The music was surreal to me. Just a combination of all these elements. I had just never seen something quite like this. And it wasn't just that it was a live cartoon. It was like the stylized language. It was, and there is a heart in this film. It's not just a slapstick for the sake of slapstick, right? Like I'd mentioned, you're talking about Nick Cage and his hair and his costume. I kind of just made a little parallel there to Jim Carrey and Ace Ventura. I mean, those are both slapstick movies. These movies couldn't be more different. Just couldn't be. This has such a different heart. It does have heart. And you can tell that as outrageous as these characters are, the Coen brothers have a love and affection for them. They aren't making fun of these characters, any of them. I absolutely loved this film when I was a kid. It had a big impact on me.
Well, you know what I think is interesting about this too is that there was almost this feeling throughout that I was thinking like there's a bizarre, not bizarre, but it's unusual for the Coens to kind of explicitly reference things in the way that they do here in both style, like you said, with cartoons and things like that, but even like how our bounty hunter,
Road Warrior
Leonard Smalls, he
immediately made me think of the Road Warrior.
Yeah, no, exactly.
When I was
going
a
to say
kid,
he looks like he's dressed in the Mad Max universe.
Yes,
with the shotguns and all on his back.
And there's even very specifically, like if you watch the original Mad Max film, one of the bikers runs over Mad Max's wife and child, which is a fundamental aspect of like that character's backstory and creation, where he turns from Max to Mad Max. And you even have like the baby shoes, and the camera
after the explosion and all that
doesn't show the biker running over the baby, right, or the toddler. It just shows the shoes left kind of tumbling. We have a very similar imagery here where one of the totems of the biker and of the bounty hunter in this film are like a bronze pair of baby shoes. And so you're right. I mean, and that was the other thing. I mean, as a kid, it was like one of the first instances where I almost felt like a filmmaker was like communicating to me like, oh, they must have loved the Road Warrior too.
Yeah.
Like I see, I get it. We're on the same page, filmmaker. Like, cool,
Well,
so
I think it's neat too, because I when I was watching it, I didn't realize that Deakins hadn't shot this. I don't know why, but it's their next film, Barton Fink, that Deakins came on for.
Barry Sonnenfeld shot this.
Barry Sonnenfeld.
And he shot Blood Simple, their first film.
The cinematographer for this. And yet I found it so funny when John Goodman and
Williams Forsythe?
What's his name? Ewell or whatever, Enel, I think his name is in the movie. When they break out of prison, even though Shawshank Redemption came out, I think 5 or 6 years after this, that scene plays like a parody of Shawshank Redemption, and yet there's no way that it could have been. And I was actually thinking at the time, I was like, I guess this is where Deakins practiced his Shawshank Redemption scene, because it kind of looks the same, and then realized afterwards that it's not Deakins. And I was like, that's very
kind of
funny
wild.
that it's clearly, there's no way that it is parodying a movie that would come out 5 years after it.
But maybe Shawshank saw inspiration in this, though. Yeah.
But just the way that he's yelling in the rain and the thunder and the lightning, all that, I was like, this is very funny. But yeah, and then again, like there's also this kind of like Badlands, Sugarland Express, they're
out in the desert.
Kind of,
it's like in the wasteland.
Like this, and this like outlaw couple kind of thing. But they're not really outlaws in this, and that's where the comedy comes in. Is that, well, A, Holly Hunter's a cop. So obviously she's not an outlaw.
At least for the first part of the film. The first act.
And B, Nick Cage might be an outlaw, but he, in this, again, like this wonderfully Coen's way, he's not, like, even like the parole board kind of are like, they just kind of scold him like a teacher would, and they're like, now you,
what are you doing
sure,
here
like,
again, son?
Just, are you telling us what we want to hear? And then even again, like going back to, like you said, where it's like this Acme styled cartoon where people are chasing that wonderful like set piece of him trying to get the diapers and steal diapers from a store, and then he just keeps losing the diapers, so he keeps running to another store to get the diapers. And it's just going through these places and people are screaming, and there's just like
everybody's shooting at him.
Like, that to me reminds me so much of like Sam Raimi's sense of humor too. But the way that it goes through that, and it's like you never again, you're never worried that he's going to be shot and killed or anything, even though
No.
the cop, you just hear the bangs of the gun constantly throughout the whole scene, and the store clerk is also chasing him. But you just have this like wonderful sense of just fun and like chaos, and like
well,
you
and
said, like it's like an old Looney Tunes cartoon.
I mean, and it's such a specific. It's and that's the other thing. Even though it's slapstick, it's very specific. And it's one of the things that the Coen Brothers have always been so good at. And I think any filmmaker that's good, it's an absolute necessity of that is that it's specific perspective, specific point of view. And the Coens have always had it. I mean, since day one. And their sense of humor, I think, is so specific. I don't mean niche, but I mean they're specific in the execution of everything they do. So even though it's like a live, action cartoon, it's slapstick in a lot of ways, it's still very specific. And I think that's a big part of why it's so great. I mean, I want to talk too, just kind of walk through some of the aspects of this film, and I'm curious what you think about this, having just seen it for the first time, because I didn't really remember this until I saw it again last night, was how long the introduction is. I mean, we've got almost a 10-minute long fully narrated, basically introduction to the film. And it's almost as if the entire first act of the film is this narrated introduction, this prologue, if you will, almost. I was surprised. I didn't remember. I think it's such a place where a film could have really messed up to have 10-minute introduction narration, but they do such an amazing job of setting up the entire rest of the film in a humorous way. Cage's narration is superb. It's like such a potential pitfall, but they do such a great job of it. I didn't remember that the opening credits don't come up until like 10 plus minutes into the film.
Yeah.
Well,
the other thing too about that intro is like you are introduced to so many characters that just don't end up coming back at all, but it serves a completely different purpose than plot. It serves to set up tone, which I think is super important.
Sets up tone, sets up
and it
character.
sets up so much about Nicolas Cage's character, how, the first time he's in
Holly
prison,
Hunter's
there's the guy mopping the floor that growls at him and is kind of like, all right. But then by the end of it, he's like happy to see him in this funny way. And so it just kind of sets up this, that Nick Cage's character has this, I mean, it's a totally romanticized vision of this, like,
well, that's
like,
what's
I'm a happy outlaw, but it's such an innocent version of that too, which is great.
And it's because it's all from his POV, right?
Yeah,
He's the narrator, and so it's one of the really beautiful things about the film is that you hear him commenting on his life while we're seeing it. So and you're right, and it educates us so much in his character because we see the contrast between what really happened and how he's describing it. And so that difference lets us in on his perspective. And you gave a great example where he's describing prison and how, it's like coming home to to family almost or something. People, yes, it's tough, but there's so much, there's some really beautiful things there too. And really all we see is like the growling, nasty, they didn't have a lot of budget, and you can see that there were limitations in that, but they did such a great job with creating all these shortcuts for things. And so we really don't see anything about prison except for the guy talking in a cell about crawfish and the nasty guy mopping every time he walks in. And that's pretty much all we're ever exposed to as far as prison goes. We see his booking over and over again, but, so they also use it to great effect, showing the progression, of how the character is kind of, doing the same thing over and over again, but kind of moving towards a relationship with Holly Hunter's police character. And anyway, I was surprised about that. I didn't remember that being such a part of the introduction of the film, that it was so long. But I've seen films where I think that kind of narration can really slow a film down, can kind of be a pitfall. But they nail it here. I think it's hysterical.
Oh, totally, yeah. And I mean, the other thing too about the Coens that I think is consistent throughout all of their work is just that they do have an incredible talent for writing like one scene characters, like characters that are just not even supporting characters, but just characters that show up for 1 2-minute scene
moment, yeah,
that maybe have 5 or 6 lines that, again, and I'm going to go back to the old man in that bank robbery when John Goodman and William Forsythe are
they're like,
robbing that
freeze,
little bank.
get down,
And the guy's like,
do I
well,
freeze?
do you want
Do
me
I
to freeze? But he's not even like arguing with him. He's just
Yeah.
kind of like pointing out the logic in the situation. And then he's like, and then when he says shut up, it's like, well, okay, like I'm gonna do what you want me to do.
It's almost a great parallel to the character in the gas station in No Country for Old Men,
yeah,
where the character is kind of almost this dumbfounded, kind of just dumbfounded by the ridiculousness of the scenario. It's not that they're dumb. Like, that character is clearly not dumb. He's actually kind of smart. He's like, well, you just commanded us into a contradiction. Which one do you want? And it's almost like that the character that's kind of dumbfounded by Javier Bardem's character in No Country for Old Men, where he's like, what are you talking about? Flip for what? What in the world do you mean? It's just interesting a little bit. They're different characters. They have different purposes, but it's just interesting that you see this, I think, this theme over and over and over again. They're clearly interested in kind of rural, kind of country folk, but and they use them, I think, sometimes obviously to comedic effect, but also to I don't feel like they're ever making fun of these characters.
Yeah, no, it's like it's kind of the positive side of like naivete, where it's like they're naive, but in a not in the negative sense, in the way that's just kind of like, well, I would never assume that somebody would be wrongdoing. Like I'm just going to get to the bottom of this situation by asking questions. And so it always works. And so you get, again, that's kind of what I mean when I say that there's these little, tidbits of stuff that clearly expands into larger and larger things as their career progresses. And even, even the way they shoot scenes, like the way that they direct just dialogue is actually very subtly unique from a lot of other filmmakers, in that like they never ever, I mean, with a few exceptions, but for the most part, when they're shooting two people talking, there's like never over the shoulder. That they always have this great way, because I think they trust their actors so much. They always put the camera in between the two characters, and it's always like a wider lens, but it's a medium shot, so they're still like, they're not right up in someone's face, so you're getting almost the entire upper half of someone's body.
There's a lot of shot reaction shot, as opposed to
exactly,
twofers or like over the shoulders.
And so they I think the way they do that makes it's like almost this really blunt way of shooting dialogue. Just like their humor is very blunt, like they have a very blunt and sarcastic but sincere, if that makes any sense of humor that I think works so well, which obviously, if their direction style didn't match that, I don't think they'd be nearly as successful as they are. But because they have this perfect match between like their artistry and their senses of humor that are probably even beyond them just as filmmakers, I'm sure they carry that sense of humor very much through them, because in interviews they're pretty funny guys too, or at least
dryly funny, but
Joel. Yes, exactly. And so I think it's really interesting though, just that, you get this like perfect marriage of like technical ability and just creative style in this really unique way, which I think is
well, and and the one thing too, I just want to say, and I feel like this, I don't know if watching films like this shaped this in me, or if it was in me and it's why I love these films so much. But I have always had this extreme soft spot. I'm going to try to find a way to articulate it here. This extreme soft spot or love, whatever you want to call it, place in my heart for really outrageous things executed extremely competently and seriously, right? So it's like when I was a kid, it was like I almost liked Weird Al Yankovic, but I was like, it's not executed well enough. Like, this would be funny if his recordings actually sounded better than the master recordings from the artist, but they never sounded as good to me as the master recordings from the actual artist he was parodying. I like, all due respect, Weird Al is awesome. I'm not saying Weird Al is not awesome, but in my mind, it was almost like if you took, the absolute best cinematic skills, but just applied them to the most ridiculous subject matter or something. You know, I don't know. And I don't know if it's like watching films like this is what kind of keyed that in for me. But I was like, this is so superbly executed. It's so well shot. It's so well written. It's so well acted. But it's totally ridiculous and goofy.
Yeah.
But there's even in all of that, there's still heart, and there's still something else. It's not just ridiculous, and it's almost like it's like this, you know, beautiful exterior with this really goofy kind of center, but then dig further underneath the goofiness, and it's like serious again. I wish that I were smarter to be able to describe this better. I hope that people out here can understand what I'm talking about. But it's like you see a lot of like comedies now, especially in today's day and age. You'll see these comedies where it's just it's like I don't even know what to say. It's like they're executed crap. And it's how to even describe it. Do you get what saved me? Save me. Do you see what I'm saying?
I totally know what you mean, though. Is that there's this disconnect between this assumption that there are certain genres that require less of an understanding or skill around the art form, and that certain genres like comedy, for example, can be saved by things other than filmmaking skills. And that they can be saved by simply on the virtue of good writing, or simply on the virtue of good performances and stuff like that. And yet, what you get very specifically with the Coens is people who are very funny, but also great performances, but also people who understand film to such a degree that they're able to execute that humor in such a specifically cinematic style.
Well, and
versus just... And that's what I mean, versus
serious.
Just having something be funny because it's funny and you're filming it. Whereas they use every single aspect of cinema in their humor.
Yes. And use it with a high degree, like a seriousness they're taking the execution seriously.
Yeah.
And they mean everything they say, and they're competent as all hell. And to me, that just makes the content, like the humor in the film, just exponentially more effective.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I mean, look, this is kind of duh, right? I mean, you know, but I feel like it's so lacking in so many comedies I see today. Now, especially, I mean, I don't even know if we have films. Do we have films like this anymore today? I don't know. I watch less and less current films. And,
I don't think
to my detriment,
make a movie like this. Just
but
on
do we have
nobody would pay for
films like this?
Yeah.
And you know, and even again, like films that kind of came out a few years after this. I mean, you have kind of like the Naked Gun series, which I feel like were some slapstick films that were out at this time. You had, you know, like I said, the Ace Ventura films, which came out, of course, in the mid or early 90s. So a few years after this, I mean, you had like the Airplane movies, you know, that were in the 70s. I mean, there's always been slapstick movies, but I feel like this is head and shoulders above those, in my opinion. Not that those aren't funny movies in their own right, but just the level of execution. You know, it's like, you know, Shakespeare writing a comedic play. You know, I mean, it's just the sharpness, the specificity, the competency with all of the different layers of cinematic grammar.
Well, and I was going to say too, like totally in that line, that I think one of the things that makes the Coens so good at it too is that they're really, really good at directing drama as well.
Absolutely.
And so when you infuse that into comedy, and you have people who actually take these, even though, like I made the joke earlier that there's like no stakes in the film, and that's, to us,
it's not entirely true.
But
you mean
to the characters, the stakes are very high.
Yeah.
Like, and that's the difference. That's the thing, is it's not like the characters are going through and not caring about anything and are impartial. The characters, this is life or death. Like, this is like the most important thing that they've done. And so that's what, and when you have characters that believe that, even though we are looking at it with this kind of like innocent gaze and this like relatively, positive spin on even the negative moments, you still have directors who are really competent at directing drama. So because of that, the characters are able to react to the drama in the story in a really grounded way that I think brings it to another level versus something like an Airplane, which I love Airplane.
Yeah,
And
me
yet you
too.
would
Me
never,
too.
you never have, everything in Airplane is still farcical. Like it's supposed to be humorous and farcical.
Well,
and
it's a series of
satirical
gags. That
yeah,
that movie is
exactly.
a series of gags, and Ace Ventura is a series of gags, and this is not. This has gags, but this is not a series of gags. I would add to this something. I think you sparked something, an idea in me. It's not that there aren't stakes in the film or that they're not high, but they're different than what the stakes aren't. That we think that Nick Cage high is going to get shot by the police or by the what is the name of the gas station, the shortstop, clerk, or the guy in the grocery store with the shotgun. We don't think that he's going to, but the stakes are the relationships. The stakes are these two characters going to be able to be together? Are they going to have a family? Are they going to figure this out? It's not even, we're not worried about the baby. We know the baby's going to be fine. This is not that kind of movie. We know immediately what kind of movie this is. Nobody's going to get hurt. The baby's not going to get hurt. Characters aren't going to get shot. Nobody's going to die. At least, not in any way that's going to be tragic. But there is actual real stakes in the relationship between the main characters. Herbert and Edwina. There's real stakes there.
Yeah.
And I think that's maybe, when you talk about that they have competency as dramatic directors, and I think that's where that shines. I think that's where that comes through, is that we really do care about these characters. As cartoony as they are, there is still humanity there. And and it's humanity that we recognize in ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think
there's emotional stake.
And I think even, and I would even speak to, you talked about how great they were at creating these, even characters that are in maybe just one scene or they're, peripheral kind of characters. I think they do a great job of even showing little hints of real humanity, even in those characters. And even when they're kind of just meant to be comedic, I think almost every one of these characters, there's something there that's very human and that we recognize. And I think that's often missing from a lot of these just more superficial comedies like Ace Ventura, where sometimes they even get ugly. They're like, their comedy takes a turn in directions that I'm like,
it gets
is that
like
even
mean.
really funny?
Yeah.
It's a mean, and I don't think we ever see that.
Well, and I think it's interesting too that you brought
Coen's
up
film.
Shakespeare, because I have read and done stuff from like The Taming of the Shrew, which is
hold on, just a quick pause. Taming of the Shrew. I just want to give a shout out. My wife and I went to the Frida Cinema, which is an awesome independent or nonprofit cinema here in Orange County, in Santa Ana, and saw 10 Things I Hate About You, which is
there you go.
yeah. So just kind of like an extrapolation from Taming of the Shrew. It's a super fun flick from the 90s. Anyway, so shout out to Frida Cinema. Okay, sorry for the introduction.
No, but that was what I was just going to say, was that you have this play written in like the 1590s, and yet I remember reading it in high school for like, because we had to do like scene studies from it and perform it.
Right.
And it's still being really, really funny. And not only being really, really funny, but also giving an actor so much. Like I remember finding, when I heard that when my acting teacher, my like drama teacher gave me the play, because everyone got a different Shakespeare play they had to do, and he was like, "Well, you'll probably like this one because it's a comedy," and so gave me it, and I had to do it with a scene partner and all that. I remember being like concerned at first that I was like, "Well, how do you make Shakespeare funny? Like how do you?" And you don't have to make it funny, because it's just when you have that level of like talent in writing, things that are funny are just end up being timeless. Like they end up being something that there's very human elements to good senses of humor that are I think kind of cross the barriers of like generations. And so I remember just reading through it and like the scenes that we were actually performing together, and just immediately being sparked with like all these this inspiration about like, oh, I could do like, this is how I could physically perform this scene. That would be really funny and that would work. And it's like you're never working against the actual subject matter. It really much is enhancing what you're doing as an actor. And I see that so much in stuff like this, where their writing is so specific, and yet you still see all these actors building on it and being able to provide, like, put performance to those words that I think otherwise, with perhaps less talented directors or less talented writers or whatever, you would end up in a situation where either the writing would be so specific that there's no actor that's perfect for it, or the writing will be so non-specific that everyone is just kind of trying to be funny and add their own flair and add their own sense of humor to it, that it ends up just being muddled. And I think that's what you see with a lot of, I think comedies that are not as good as what the Coens do, is just that you lose that specificity. And that was, you kind of stressed that earlier about how, like, important it is that they are specific about their work. And so, yeah, I do think it's neat that you mentioned Shakespeare, because I was thinking about that as well, where it's like you've got this, just the writing is so good and so tight that if you're performing it, you know where the writer wants you to go even without talking to them, and yet you also can add so much to it in performance.
Yeah. I think, and it's interesting. I mean, you talk about kind of specificity, it makes me think of, stories that I've kind of heard where, the Coens are very specific. I think at least on this film, they extremely specific with their script. I think on all their films, they're very specific with the execution of their script, and they don't generally allow for a lot of improvisation. And at least that's my understanding. Mm-hmm. And, that's definitely, it sounds like what was the case on this film, to the point where Cage, I think wanted to, had a lot more suggestions, wanted to bring, a lot more discussion to the character and things. And the Coens were like, no, no. And I almost, and look, I love Jim Carrey. I absolutely love Jim Carrey, but I imagine, him on the set of like Ace Ventura or something, and it's like, he's just improvising up a storm. I mean, there's not even,
or even
like
Man on the
hardly
Moon,
a script.
Right? Like,
There's not even like hardly a script there,
Mm-hmm.
And so that it's totally different takes on things. But
well, and I've heard in interviews too, like Joel sort of say that, people will ask him, how much do actors improvise in your stuff and all that, and he sort of always responds, he's like, well, I wrote it the way I wrote it for a reason.
Right.
Like, it's like there's a specific use for every word in that script, and they all have specific meaning to be in there. And so very rarely will they say to an actor, yeah, just, figure this out.
Right.
And I agree with that on a pretty fundamental level, actually, that I think that I've never really loved movies that are infused with a ton of improv. There obviously are exceptions, like as anything. But for the most part, I find when you get something that's like super improvisational and, it's just people kind of riffing back and forth and seeing what sticks, is that you just sort of end up feeling that. Like, you feel like there's always just kind of this pause in the energy to let someone riff for a bit and to get it there. And it's like, what? But I've always just kind of wondered, like, if you're writing and you're directing, then, like, why aren't you making these decisions? Like,
right.
Why aren't you figuring that
well,
out?
and there's a place for everything. I think, some films are just excuses for gas, again, just there's a series of gags, a series of jokes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Some films are just very, very loose lattices for that. And that's just not the kind of films that the Coen brothers make. They're and I think too, generally speaking, the Coen brothers stick to pretty, classical story structure. They often take from, classical literature. They're steeped in that, I think. And I don't think the story here is any different. I think it's highly structured. It's very specific, and every aspect of the film is conscientiously chosen, to that end. And yeah, I think that, the Coen brothers write the way a playwright writes, a sense that, and not only do they do that with their language, right? Where, if you've ever acted for the stage or anything, that you don't get up on stage and start, improvising off of a playwright's words. That's not how that works.
Yeah.
Like, often you are even legally bound. Within, obviously sometimes people go up and you have to, you go up on your lines and you have to get back to it however you can. But often, when you buy the rights to perform a play, or you're licensing the play to perform it, it's not an option. Like, you have to perform it as it's written,
Mm-hmm.
You're even kind of bound by that in a legal sense when you license the rights to perform it. So
yeah.
but I think the Coens are not only are they like that with their language, but they're like that with every aspect, um, visual and otherwise. I but they, look, I love Airplane too, and I mean, I'm not a big fan of Ace Ventura, but I'm a big fan of Jim Carrey in general. You mentioned Man on the Moon. Curious to know how much Milos Forman actually kind of allowed him, space there, and that was probably an interesting push and pull between the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe we'll pick that film sometime, and maybe that would be a good discussion. But yeah, but regardless, it talked about Nick Cage not being able to kind of input maybe as much as he had wanted to, but still his performance here is one of his best. I mean, Holly Hunter is fantastic. John Goodman is fantastic. Of course, John Goodman goes on to almost be, like a regular player. He's been in so many Coen Brothers films. Trey Wilson is superb as Nathan Sr. I mean, even Randall Tex Cobb, who's not even an actor, he's the guy that played the bounty hunter we were talking about that reminded us of some aspects of Mad Max and the Road Warrior. Everybody is put to such perfect use here, and everybody is such a treat, in my opinion, to see. But I just can't help to just think back to when I was a kid, dude, and I was watching. I mean, it's one of my most absolute. And I was so happy that you picked it. And it's so interesting that you'd not seen it before, because watching it as a kid, it was just, you have those cinematic experiences where it's just you have a pure sense of joy, where you just feel like every aspect of the film was made for your little heart.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Now, do I feel that today as a 47-year-old as opposed to when I was 13? Maybe not to the same extent, but it definitely still presses the right buttons. But I mean, it's just one of those wonderful cinematic experiences where I was just like, this is awesome. They have my sense of humor.
I mean, there's nothing better than I love watching a movie where, like, again, not to say that I could make this or could make anything, but when you see a director make choices and you're like, that's a choice that I would make, like, that's like, I have, like, you kind of feel that, like, a camaraderie in the sensibilities of, like, man, I feel like I could, not again make this, these two are incredibly talented filmmakers, but sort of sit there and go like, yeah, that I couldn't think of a better way to do that. Like, that would be, and so there's something really fun about, it almost is, you get more involved in the film as it goes on and as it unfolds before you.
Yeah. I was just really, really pleasantly surprised that you'd picked it. And I totally thought that you would have seen it before. So it's like on this recording is the first time I'm like, what? You hadn't seen it?
Yeah.
I mean, there's other things we could, the soundtrack is, I think it's just, so wonderfully chosen. It's, I mean, I remember how, that aspect of it seemed kind of so surreal, but so perfect. I mean, the yodeling, I don't even know, am I using, is that what it is it yodeling? I'm so sorry that I'm so ignorant of this, but just that, the kind of the main theme that's repeated over and over again. And I love how, when he's in the supermarket, that theme is repeated with, like, but it's in the Muzak, over the speakers and the,
yes.
And it's like so perfectly done. It's just, every aspect of it was just so cool. And we had talked about too, the cinematography. You'd mentioned Raimi before, and I just want to kind of speak a little more specifically to this piece before we wrap up. But it was later that I did see Evil Dead. I saw Evil Dead 2, and then I think I saw Army of Darkness, and then I saw Evil Dead 1. Just kind of my order of those films, watching those.
I think I was the same. Yeah, I think I had the exact same order.
And I remember that, like, the Raimi cam, I don't know, the underslung, like, I think they, like, put a camera on, like, I don't even know if it's actually a steady camera.
I think it's 2x4s.
I think they literally just underslung it on a 2x4 and just, two people just ran with it. But, you see that in this film too. And you talked about how they were friends with Raimi. And I remember connecting that, so as I'm, like, starting to kind of formulate, like, oh, directors are people, and they're like friends with each other, and they like help, and they kind of inspire each other. And oh yeah, look, I remember that shot from the dream sequence in Raising Arizona where, we've got this demon in his dream that's like coming to get him through the window. And hey, wait, that's the exact same shot in this, I don't know, it's just kind of all of that was so formative to me. All of those films were kind of there. And I think because they were so stylized, it helped me kind of realize as a kid that like style was a thing.
Yes.
Because it was so obvious, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe next we'll have to do a Raimi movie.
We could do a Raimi film. We could do, look, there's so many films. I think I know what I'm going to pick, but that's what I love about this, is that you just never seem to run out of good films. Well, any parting thoughts here as we kind of wrap up? Anything else you'd like to touch base on that we didn't get a chance to?
I think we've covered it all. I mean, again, great movie. I would highly recommend if you haven't seen it, like me.
Yeah.
Go check it out. It's a lot of fun. It's a super easy watch, like really, really engaging and really, really great. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, fantastic. Well, thanks for picking it. It was so fun to revisit it and to discuss it here with you today. Thanks for listening, everybody out there. Until next time, we'll catch you on the flip side.
Bye-bye.